All right. So, good evening, good morning, and good afternoon to all the EcoITCon viewers joining across the globe. My name is Manish, and I'm back with yet another interesting conversation on this fireside chat from EcoITCon. Today, we have a very interesting personality joining us for this session, Mr. Niladri Choudhuri. I would say Dr. Niladri Choudhuri. Niladri is a CEO of Excellentro, and he is based out of Singapore as well as Bangalore. Welcome, Niladri, to this session today.
Thank you, Manish. Nice to be here.
Um, the subject for deliberation, Niladri, is the considerations for sustainable DevOps, and we will deep dive up, deep dive into some of the specific aspects of how DevOps can be made sustainable, what's the future roadmap forward, and how sustainable IT has the bearing on DevOps. But before doing that, I cannot miss introducing Niladri and his vast experience. Niladri is an industry veteran with 31 years of experience. He has helped a number of Fortune 500 organizations in improving their ways of working through various consulting assignment. He's a DevOps, DevSecOps, and SRE evangelist. He's a speaker in various global forums. Niladri has been conducting number of podcasts, panel discussions, and various conversations on DevOps and SRE for practitioners and leaders. So, Niladri, welcome to this session formally again, and we will probably start with the first very basic foundational elements of DevOps, and we'll take it from there, right? So, Niladri, there has been loads of conversation around DevOps being settled with agile now. So what next, right? So what's the agile plus plus and DevOps plus plus or DevOps next could be? On the other side, there also has been discussion around SRE being well integrated with DevOps, making it DevOps SRE together, combined principles. Now, sustainable IT is also coming up on the top as well. So do you see these coming together? How do you look at sustainable IT, sustainability elements from a DevOps angle, Niladri? I think we can start with that basic element and we'll take it further. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Manish. So as Adrian Cockcroft has coined the term DevSasOps, so we are talking about DevOps, SRE, and sustainability all coming together.
Yeah.
So when I talk about DevOps, whether by whatever name you call it, I am not keeping security away. So to me, even practicing DevOps requires security to be there.
Yeah.
Similarly, sustainability also has to be part of it. Because today we are contributing to a very, very large amount of carbon footprint.
Yeah.
We are at nearly 4%, which is the combination of, or rather more than the combination of aviation, railways, and one more.
Yeah.
And it is expected to grow to 13.5% of the global carbon footprint by 2040. So we cannot stay away from that. And it's a business risk anyway, because the way the climate change is happening, I mean, you have seen last month there was a incident where the data center of Microsoft, one of the data center crashed because of not being able to cool properly and related to climatic condition and all, and more such things will happen.
Okay.
So we cannot be away from it. We as IT practitioners have to look at it. And if you look at DevOps, DevSecOps, SRE, value stream management, all of these, the objective is to remove waste, to deliver better, faster, safer, remove constraints. All this leads to less rework. All this leads to doing things better at the very beginning. Because we also know that if there is any rework, is more not only in terms of effort and cost, but it is also in terms of energy consumption.
Correct.
If we look at anything, even if it is a vulnerability related downtime, anything from in production, if you have to bring it back to something normal, is a larger effort and larger cost and larger energy consumption required to do that. And hence, all of these has the same common objective of delivering value faster in a much better way, increase the capacity, increase the capability, increase the efficiency of doing things.
Yeah.
And all of these that we are talking about in terms of DevSecOps, SRE, value stream management, moving to cloud and everything, all those helps if done properly and if done together, not as individual elements, then definitely we are going to be more sustainable.
Sure. So, very interesting thought, Niladri. So what you're saying essentially is the efficiency and effectiveness of delivering IT, which we have been over the years focusing on. We also need to start wearing the hat more prominently on energy consumption as well, along with efficiency and effectiveness. I think that's what we are trying to say. Now, if we now bring it to the other side of it, right? Instead of looking it from efficiency and effectiveness standpoint and delivering it IT better, look at energy as a prominent subject, and say if I have an energy consumption or energy optimization objectives and goals defined for my net zero commitment, and now I'm looking at DevOps as a vehicle, or an IT delivery lifecycle as a vehicle to deliver my objective. So how do you see it in the scheme of things overall, right? I have a set of parameters for running the DevOps, running my IT delivery lifecycle. Now I'm adding the aspects of energy consumption and doing it better from a carbon footprint standpoint. How do you see it being delivered on the ground? How do we see it being measured, monitored, and delivered on the ground?
Okay. So if we look at the energy, so first of all, I would just like to spend a minute on one more aspect, which is that it is not just about the energy consumption.
Right.
We are looking at various aspects, including water wastage. We are looking at other things like definitely the energy consumption. We are looking at the IT asset disposition.
Right.
We are looking at the circular economy. So there are multiple levers, as I would call it, for sustainable IT. And we are looking at IT from two parts of it in terms of sustainability. One is practicing IT in a sustainable manner.
Correct. Yeah.
Which is where the DevOps, DevSecOps, SRE and all comes in play. So if you look at it, we are talking about moving to cloud. But just moving to cloud, the advantage of cloud native and cloud situations, right? So we have to, that is going to help. What are we looking at? We are looking at better utilization of resources. We have to look at that thing with lesser time and faster. I mean, things like when we are getting into the large language models being created, trained and all, we need to start thinking in terms of using products like Graviton and ARM-based kind of things. We need to look at how can we efficiently architect our systems? How can we efficiently use our microservices so that we can do more work with lesser time? Because lesser time on the same hardware is lesser energy consumption, right? So we have to look at those kind of aspects. We have to see that the entire architecture is dealt in such a manner that it helps in the energy consumption, in the use of energy and carbon footprint. So those are kind of things that we have to look at on one side. But on the other side, we are talking about a Kubernetes. We are practicing Kubernetes, but how can we make Kubernetes to be more efficient, to be more useful? How can we use service mesh to be more useful and help in doing the right things, loading it in the right place where when there is peak loads and so on, where in the network. So you bring in those aspects of sustainability into the algorithm itself. So that help you in doing the work. That is one part. The other part is, I mean, why is this important? Imagine a flight which is going from Mumbai to New York. The Boeing, the amount of carbon footprint it creates is equivalent to running 400 Kubernetes clusters. Now imagine Mercedes coming and saying that our cars runs on 13,000 Kubernetes clusters. That's huge, right? So we have to start looking at those fronts, including things like deciding on which development software to use and so on. But on the other side, what we also need to look at is the convergence of IT with non-IT for sustainability. How can IT enable sustainability in business? And that is where the two groups have to work together. And an example I can take is, for example, there is a logistics company who has microservice-based logistics softwares. Now they take service mesh like HTO, and they use the service mesh to integrate with those microservices to find the information in terms of traffic, to find the information about the vehicles, where they are, the information about the deliveries which has not been serviced yet, and then use that in an algorithm. And by doing so, by rerouting, they have been able to fuel consumption in their vehicles. Now you see the convergence. Now you see how we are looking at IT enabling sustainability in business, right? So we have to look at both aspects.
No, I think the convergence of business dimensions into the IT dimensions and prioritizing both together, I think it's a classic. I would say a trade-off that you need to achieve between the two as well. I think that's the point that you're also driving as well. Now, if I take the prioritization aspect, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and that is the reason why I do not believe in net zero per se, because net zero to me is more like a balance sheet of an organization, which is good
on paper per se.
On the paper, but not really. The point is about prioritization. The point is about trying to see that how much we can do and how much more benefit we can get with the minimum carbon footprint.
Correct.
And you know that many countries that those carbon offsetting kind of things are not going to be really accepted unless it can really substantiate the benefit. And that's the reason why you see some companies have come back and said, we are moving away from the target of net zero. We are going to now not look at offsetting anything. We are now going to look at how we reduce our carbon footprint. And I think that is something which is important.
Correct. And if I look at take the analogy of automation in testing lifecycle, Niladri, people used to say I achieve 95% automation, 100% automation. We all know there is a limit to which you can automate. There is a limit to which testing lifecycle can contribute to the overall SDLC, effectiveness and efficiency. So it's more to see the perspective of broad outcome and then look at driving reduction. In a similar analogy, I think net zero looks impractical to commit to, especially when you're trying to advance for your growth, which you cannot avoid. The reason why you exist is for the business and the revenue, and you continue to grow on that. You cannot continue to arrest the emissions as well. So it's a great trade-off between the two, which probably the SDLC helps us achieving that, or there are strategies within that SDLC will help us achieving those trade-offs that we can anticipate to be. Now, if I take you talked about cloud migration, some of the examples of cloud resources being optimized. You also talked about it is not just an IT delivery, but taking to the broader aspects of waste management, a number of other things as well. Right. You also talked about the third aspect of the skills. Niladri, am I losing you?
No, I can hear you.
Okay, so the third aspect of the overall skills, the considerations into the SDLC for sustainable IT. I think there's a wide gamut that come in play. Now, the question that I have, Niladri, for there is, do we devise a generalized priorities and generalized strategy for achieving sustainable IT, or we look at different categorization of projects that we drive, right? If you have a cloud migration as a project, I have a technology upgrade as a project, or I have a legacy modernization as a set of initiatives that are in front of me, would my sustainability strategy or sustainable IT strategy vary for these different goals that I'm driving as programs and projects on the ground?
I would say no. It is one strategy. It's one common shared objective that we have to achieve. And it has to come down from the board and go to the next level and so on. So if you look at a simple example, for example, if you look at a company which is an IT service company, or if you look at a company which is like a bank, now where is the maximum carbon footprint? It is in their IT because they don't have a manufacturing there. Now, the board today, because of the regulations and all in different countries, have to report scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions. I mean, I know that today scope 3 is really not being reported, but you gradually need to get into the scope 3 reporting. You need to scope 2 and scope 3, you need to look at the IT. Absolutely. And if the organization, see, it's not about reporting, it is about you are reporting to showcase or understand where you are and how you are going to improve. So if you need to improve, you cannot improve in bits and pieces. So if the board has the mandate to reduce carbon footprint, while there are various other things like your building and whatever, but your IT, which is contributing a huge amount of carbon footprint, you have to look at that also to be reduced, and you need to bring that. Now, the interesting part here is it is not only a one common shared objective, an area that we generally tend to forget in everything, starting from your all the frameworks that we know about, like in Agile and DevOps and DevSecOps, sorry, we forget about the service providers. And here, it is not going to work. In any industry, in any business, you need to look at the entire supply chain, and you have to make sure that everybody has a skin in the game in the common shared objective. And we need to build that ecosystem to bring that. And one of the major challenges today that we find is of data. And that data will come into existence only when there is a proper ethical cutting across the organizations, cutting across the geography, cutting across all the players in the ecosystem. So it has to be one single objective for all. And that's what DevSecOps also talks about, right? One common shared objective.
Correct. And the way you said it has to be driven top down. You may instantiate certain dimensions specific to the context on which you're working on, or a team's working on, but broadly the common objective has to be driven from top down, right? And that's very valid point, Niladri. Now, if I take this a little forward and come down to the teams delivering DevOps led life cycle, um, how these teams can specifically on the ground activities contributes to sustainability, Niladri?
Yeah, so if you look at whether I call it a value stream or whether I call it a product, I mean, we have to move out of any way which DevSecOps and SRE, if we really want to practice, we have to move out of the current way of doing things, which is bigger groups doing individual, a Java, a .NET, a Golang kind of team, and in database, you have SQL Server and DB2 and all those kind of teams. It doesn't work that way. A value stream kind of team. What Dr. McCurston talks about is project to product approach. So we need to move to a product or a value stream team. Once we do that, if you see the 25% reduction in my carbon footprint is, let's say, the board's thing. That will come down to IT saying that, hey, instead of 25%, we will have 30% reduction in carbon footprint, which is the CIOs. Your individual teams also to see that the products that you are maintaining and running and making changes also has to reduce. Now, if you have to reduce it, what are you going to do? You will need to refactor, you need to re-architect, you need to move certain aspects of it into cloud, which is possible, which you can do. You need to start getting into that refactoring into a cloud native kind of a product. You need to start coding in such a manner in a distributed architecture so that data movement is minimum. You are getting into a edge computing where more data is towards where it is going to be used. You use technology so that, okay, I know that this part of the day, my non-renewable energy is less in the grid. So that is not the time when I'm going to do much of a processing. I'll do a much of a processing when it is empty, or I might use algorithms so that I will not go to only one particular region, but I will go to other regions which are much greener to do heavier processing and lesser wherever it is not so green. So you need to start. It's not really about technology. Technology is an enabler, but people have to start thinking from the point of view and then decide how they are going to do it. So every team in their own product have to think from that. So KPIs related to that is more important. And even to the extent in the initial stages, it might cost you more to do things like that. But so as I say that while we are today only interested in calculating ROI, we need to calculate the contribution to environment, or CTE, you can call it, right? So you have to do that, and that should have a higher priority, a higher weightage than even cost. And that's how we have to move forward.
Yeah. And I think when you spoke about the KPIs, Niladri, right? What also is, allied to KPI is the kind of team that you have who's oriented towards contributing in a sustainable way towards the broader objective. And that's the way the skill aspect comes into play as well. So do you want to touch upon aspects of skills? And I can see that's you probably are on mute, or I'm not able to hear you. Sorry.
No.
Okay.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
No, so that's exactly the point. The point is, I look at it in the 3-step process.
Right.
Today, the biggest challenge is awareness itself.
Mm.
So we need to make people aware of sustainability, of sustainable ITs. People have to be conscious. I'll give you a simple example. In India, we have been not using plastics for buying things, right? Because it has been made mandatory.
Yeah.
That's why. The point is, because it was not available, we have not used it. Now, if I take the current situation, the government in Singapore has just announced that they will charge 5 cents more if you are taking a plastic. Here, plastic use is tremendous, right? Who cares about that 5 cents? So it is not going to be as effective, right? The point is, do we know that as a IT practitioner, how much carbon footprint are we creating even in our laptop?
Right.
I have asked sustainability leads and sustainability managers and officers, and they themselves have not calculated how much of carbon footprint they create in their own laptop. Right. So if that is the case, in that we need to bring the consciousness. We need to start getting, even organizations have to get individuals to start putting their data,
right,
so that we can start realizing that how much we are negatively contributing to the environment.
Yeah, I think
consciousness by practicing.
Yeah.
And third is enablement, where the technology comes into play. So we have to go through all the three. Now, coming to the question that you had, I was talking to somebody in Schneider,
Mm.
and it was quite interesting to hear that on both sides they have done something. On one side, Schneider has their senior management, top management's variable pay related to, portion of it related to sustainability related KPIs.
Wow. Okay.
On the other hand, their induction program for anybody who is joining Schneider has a module on sustainability.
Wow.
How many of the companies have that? At least, I mean, it's not a big deal. It might be a big deal to some extent, maybe the variable pay part of it, which requires some more maturity. But including a module on sustainability in the induction program when everybody needs to practice it is a big step to go.
Absolutely. One point that I just noticed when you saw talking, giving an example of Singapore government charging certain cent as an extra money, right? So it's a what we have seen is the adoption gets by and large normalized with some level of so-called incentivized through punishment or incentivized through benefits or regulatory compulsions, right? And that's how it starts to get adopted. And do you foresee the wider adoption of sustainable IT would your three-step approach of awareness, consciousness, and practice probably should be appended with the compulsion as well? Is that what you see as a step forward?
So the compulsion will be at the initial stages.
Right.
For long. What will happen is, while initially it is because there is a mandate you are going to do it, somebody is forcing you to do it. But tomorrow, when some people will start doing it, then it's a question of peer pressure or it's a question of competition. Then it's not about anything else. I mean, today already we have seen that organizations have started asking their service providers, how green is your service or the product that you're giving? And
Right.
they are willing to pay a little bit more if it is more greener.
Yeah. Yeah.
So gradually it will not be a stick kind of a scenario, but it is going to be more about the pressure from competition.
Yeah. And in fact, I would say a pressure then will result into some level of culture change as well. It becomes like a de facto ways of working, and then probably we will find a greener and cleaner software being delivered as well. But interesting thoughts, Niladri. There is a lot to talk, and wealth of knowledge that you carry. I'm sure hours and hours will be less for us, but we still are time constrained. We'll have to take a pause somewhere. It was really insightful having you on the call and this discussion, Niladri. Some of the pointers that you mentioned about was practicing IT in a sustainable way, top-down kind of drive or a mandate, or over the time becoming culture is the way forward. The three-step approach of awareness to conscious to practice, I think, is another area that you mentioned. KPI-driven measurement and kind of controlled way of implementing is something which you spoke about. And very interestingly, achieving net zero to certain extent you can try, but the direction or a trajectory towards achieving zero is more important than really achieving that last goal, which is a trade-off at the end of the day. I think very, very, very thoughtful insights that came out in the conversation, Niladri. I'm sure our viewers have a lot to take out of this thread, but thank you so much for taking this time out for us and coming over this fireside chat today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manish, and thanks to EcoITCon, and all the best for more people to come in, experts to come in, and we also get a lot more to learn from many.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.